Jordie Benn placed on injured reserve, but thankfully, before he even got injured, the Leafs traded for a young defenseman who could potentially be a stud. What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. So yes, this is a two-part video. We will break it all down here. The most recent Leafs news that we've gotten out here today, and some of it also dating back to yesterday pre-game, but obviously wasn't going to put out a video right before yesterday's game, as we were going live after the game. So if you want to see more live content, you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the Leafs Digest channel, click like on this video, and then hit that bell, turn on notifications so you get notified every time that we go live, or every time a video just like this drops with Leafs updates, news, injury information, and all of our opinions here on what is going on. So let's get into it. First and foremost, because this is the precursor to what became ultimately a very important trade that was made by Kyle Dubas yesterday, Jordie Benn is placed on the injured reserve and is considered week to week by the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was placed on it with an upper body injury that he sustained in the second period of the game against the New Jersey Devils. He returned for the third period, played 2 shifts, and then ultimately he wasn't able to go. He had to leave the game. So I don't necessarily know what happened with Jordie Benn here. I watched it back a million times. I watched the broadcast. I've scrolled through Twitter for hours, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be, and I couldn't find any types of videos or information on specifically what happened. But the team doesn't seem overly concerned by it, and the fact that they only placed him on injured reserve and he's going to be week to week as opposed to immediately on LTIR, much like Muzzin, Murray, Morgan Riley, it tells us that they don't feel it's going to be as serious. So, I mean, that's the gist of it, really. Jordie Benn, injured reserve. I didn't see the injury in terms of what went down. He was laboring it during the second period. He looked like he was skating around hurt for a little bit. Nobody really knew. It kind of looked like maybe it was a lower body injury after he had taken that fall to the ground where he was battling with Nate Bastian in front of the net. But ultimately, that's not what it ended up being. Lower body injury, maybe it came from that. I'm not entirely sure, but he's going to be week to week and continually reevaluated. He will have to miss a minimum of a week, though. So that gets us into the second part of the conversation here. This is the Leafs' current roster D right now. Mark Giordano, Justin Holl, Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren, Victor Mete, as of right now, in replacement of Jordie Benn, and Mac Hollowell. And the new member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Conor Timmins. Conor Timmins only currently listed as the 7th defenseman right now because they would like him to get some more reps, skate with the team a little bit more before he hops into a game. So looks like Victor Mete will be playing in the 6th, 5-6, however you want to name it, defenseman spot tomorrow against Minnesota during this Thanksgiving weekend. But it looks like they have some type of interest in Conor Timmins actually playing in this lineup. Now, Arizona was going to waive him or thought they might have to waive him, but they weren't that interested in doing so because they knew somebody was going to pick him up. So ultimately, they end up making a deal with the Leafs, who seem to be right now their favorite trade partner in the NHL. That's the team that they go to immediately if they want to move on from anybody or if the Leafs are looking to acquire people. Those two teams have each other on speed dial. But nonetheless, to me right now, it looks like Kyle Dubas may have possibly managed to yet again fleece the Arizona Coyotes. Now, I don't necessarily know if Conor Timmins' injury issues will pan out. That is going to be a massive factor in all of this because that's part of the problem. He's not been able to play very many games. He's only played 41 NHL games, 52 AHL games in his career throughout the course of 4 seasons. He's been up and down between the NHL and the minors, and it's mostly in part to the fact that he's been injured. He's been dealing with injury issues. He is healthy right now, but can he stay healthy? That's going to be the important question. Now, let me tell you what they saw in him. Conor Timmins, guess where he played? Well, if you thought the Sioux Greyhounds, you would be right. He was Rasmus Sandin's D partner on the Sioux Greyhounds. He has familiarity with Sandin, Kyle Dubas. I mean, he wasn't there when that happened, but you can be sure he knew a lot about Conor Timmins, and he loves the guys from the Sioux. And then the second part of this, Conor Timmins was named one of the 3 best players on Team Canada in the 2018 World Juniors, in which they won the gold medal. And guess what? He was Victor Mete's D partner there. So he has some familiarity with some of these guys. He was a highly touted prospect. He was drafted in the 2nd round by the Colorado Avalanche and 32nd overall by a team who drafts defensemen very well. They obviously saw something too. And now it's not like it hasn't really panned out for him in his professional career. It hasn't been the best, but as I mentioned, a lot of this had to do with injuries and getting over injuries and not being able to get into the lineup. In his time in the AHL, he has 52 points or 52 games played and 34 points. Now that is as a defenseman, and mind you, a young defenseman. So Conor Timmins has some type of potential here to him. He's also 6'2", 185 pounds, so he's not massive, but he's not small. He's going to come in here and be bigger than the Victor Metes, Mac Hollowells, Rasmus Sandins that we already have in the lineup. He's going to be an average-sized guy, a little bit of a heavier guy, I guess, relatively to some of the other guys on this team right now. And he's an offensively capable right-handed defenseman. This trade could potentially be a 4D chess, big brain, genius move by Kyle Dubas. Key factor, health. Can Conor Timmins stay healthy? The Leafs were in a bit of a bind here when they had to trade for Conor Timmins, in the fact that Morgan Rielly, TJ Brodie, and Jake Muzzin were already out, so they were looking for some type of depth. And lo and behold, the night that they trade for Conor Timmins, Jordie Benn goes out with an injury and will miss at least a week, considered week to week, placed on the injured reserve. That trade became a whole lot more important in the immediate, but it also meant that the Leafs had to go out and try to find a cheaper defenseman who could be here after the fact and maybe stick around this lineup, because you can send down Hollowell and Mete and some of these other guys. You can move them back and forth. Conor Timmins, if he's going to be waived, he might be claimed just like Arizona had thought he might. So basically, bringing this guy in, you're hoping that he can turn things around health-wise and be able to stick around. And there's a good opportunity here for this to pan out for the guy. He's only 24 years old. He's put up some points in the AHL. If he can stick in the NHL, maintain his health, and play on a good team, because he never really got to play NHL minutes with Colorado. It was all with Arizona for the most part. That team was a dumpster fire. It's hard for anybody to look very good there. Think about what happened when Michael Bunting left. Think about what would happen, or what happened when Darcy Kemper left, or what might happen if Jacob Chikrin leaves there. Those guys' games will elevate because they're getting out of a bad situation that just drags everyone down when you're on a bad team. 41 total games in the NHL for Timmins, though, 7 assists, no goals, and an even plus-minus, so he hasn't been overly impactful in his time, but let's see what he can do with a little bit of minutes, some health, and being in a good organization. Now, my original thought on it was, hey, this guy's insurance. We'll keep him around. Hopefully he can help out. He's a cheap contract. 1 year, $850K. Perfect. Jordie Benn goes out, and oh my goodness, does that trade become a whole lot more important in the short term. So we'll see what goes on there. It looks like he might be able to get in the next little while, but it's not going to be in the next game against the Minnesota Wild. Now, the piece that went out the door, Curtis Douglas. There's going to be a lot of Leafs fans who are up in arms about the fact that we traded this massive, monstrous mountain of a human being away and got back a smaller, in their books, defenseman coming back this way. What I'm going to say about this is going to rub people the wrong way, some people the wrong way, and I completely understand that. And if you disagree, feel free to let us know in the comments. But this is the perfect example of you need to be careful what you ask for when you sit here and you beg for these big players. Big players doesn't necessarily mean that they play big. You need players who play big. I don't care if the guy is 5'5" or if he's 6'9". That guy has to play big. You're going to look here at this lineup. Dennis Malgin right now is a guy who kind of actually plays big, especially considering his size. He's not afraid to go in the corners. He's not afraid to battle, compete, fight for pucks, all that kind of stuff. Curtis Douglas is 6'9", 243 pounds, and the guy wouldn't lay a body check. In the entire time that we saw him up with the Leafs, he lacked physicality, he lacked presence, and guess what? He was slower, heavy-footed player who wasn't able to contribute much. So if he can't do anything offensively, he's struggling to score, create things, he's not the best passer or stick handler, and he's not going to hit anybody. These massive mountains of human beings that you're demanding come to the Maple Leafs, sometimes it's not going to mean that much. So be careful what you ask for in terms of these big players. I don't mean this as a personal attack to Curtis Douglas, but it's more just a general precautionary thing when you're going to sit here and demand big guys come to the team. Is that guy going to play big? If not, then what does it matter? It becomes an irrelevant point. Now, on top of this, Curtis Douglas, 22 years old. I talked about the fact he's 6'9", 243. He's a left-handed centerman. He's struggled so far in the AHL. 1 assist in 13 games played. He's not producing offensively. He was getting bumped down the lineup. And you know where Arizona expects to slot him in? As their third-line center. They needed a guy to play the third-line center. He fits the role. He's not the best player, and the Leafs obviously looked at him and said, we haven't seen enough growth since last season. They signed him to a 1-year contract or 2-year contract, want to keep him around, want to see, hey, maybe this guy can continue to progress. It hasn't been there, and the opportunity came up for them to go out and get another player in return for it. Done. Easy deal for you. So you take that one. We'll see what it becomes, but Curtis Douglas just was struggling to stick around in the AHL at this point, so the Leafs obviously looked at him and were like, we don't think he's going to make any type of impact here. Be careful what you ask for with these big players. So in summary here, Jordie Benn placed on injured reserve with an upper body injury, will be out week to week, will miss minimum of 1 week. And the Leafs trade 6'9", 243-pound centerman Curtis Douglas to the Arizona Coyotes in return for Conor Timmins. Conor Timmins is a 6'2", 185-pound right shot defenseman who is able to put up some points in the AHL, and hopefully, with some health, he could potentially make an impact on this Leafs team and help them out in a very, very, very desperate time of need with 4 defensemen out now. Current lineup: Mark Giordano, Justin Holl, Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren, Victor Mete, Mac Hollowell, Conor Timmins. Very interesting defensive lineup they will be rolling with here. See how it all pans out, Leafs fans. Thank you guys so much for tuning in here. If you enjoyed the content, if you want to see more of it, hit like on this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you get notified every single time we go live. I will see you guys after the next Leafs game. Keep believing.